I'd like to welcome everybody back to BUFORD PUSSER, the other story. And as you know, the last couple of Saturdays, we've been talking about what District Attorney General Mark Davidson might be looking at as he examines the TBI file. And I thought I would explain, or at least try to explain to you, something about things that he might consider. And of course, you know that there's a mountain of evidence out there now that didn't seem to exist back in 1967. Now, there's also a lot of things that would probably be considered as circumstantial evidence. And I want to explain something about that. You know, direct evidence is more like the shell casings, projectiles, Buford's car itself, uh, things that are directly tied to Pauline's homicide. And then there's a lot of other things that you're going to get into that a lot of the people want to say, well, they can't use that because that is nothing more than circumstantial evidence. Well, circumstantial evidence can play a pretty heavy role in determining the outcome of a particular investigation. For instance, to give you an example, one that Jason White used on this YouTube series not too long ago, if you'll recall, he said it's like when you get ready to go to bed, you look outside, everything looks perfectly normal. The next morning you get up and the ground is all white, covered in snow. Now, you didn't see it snow, but yet you know that it absolutely did because the ground is white. Well, the fact that the snow is there is a positive thing. The fact that you didn't see it actually fall from the sky is another. So, you know, it's that's the way circumstantial evidence works. I mean, it is nothing more than a reasonable deduction that you happen to come to based upon the evidence and information that you've gathered. And so you do see some court cases where circumstantial evidence is admitted. And, you know, give you another example of that. That would be like all the people that say that they had to pay Buford to be able to operate their little clubs, their beer joints, whatever. Moonshine stills, that was another one. Now, you'll have a lot of people that are very much pro Pusser saying, well, you know, they were the syndicate. Folks, there was no syndicate. There, during Buford's time, there was only Louise Hathcock and Towhead White. And that little reign lasted for 17 months. It didn't go on forever. But yet, even at the time that Pauline was killed, Buford would still be saying, well, it's an element, a criminal element from northeastern Mississippi that killed Pauline. I mean, he always had a go-to. And when the state liners didn't work, then he just shifted gears a little bit. It's really strange when you look at it that way. And circumstantial evidence uh, being, well, I'll give you an example here. You've got all these moonshiners, and a lot of them say, hey, if you didn't pay Buford, he would bust up your still. And I'm sure he would. He had a record of busting up some stills, not as many as the museum likes to claim, not as many as you see in books and hear about in movies and so on. For instance, his first full year in office, while the museum claims that he took down 88 stills, the local newspaper gave him credit for only 28. He didn't argue with that 28. I guess he was pretty proud of that number. And that was very comparable to what every other sheriff in those days was doing. So that was nothing spectacular. But more to the point, here you've got all these moonshiners saying, well, if you didn't pay, he would bust up your still. And when you think about it, they were moonshiners. They didn't cooperate with each other necessarily. They were competitors. They had a market for their product that they wanted to be able to sell it to, and it didn't behoove them to be in a syndicate with anybody else because that would just cut down their market share. The same way with the beer joints. I mean, I've interviewed people that would tell me that, yeah, we had to pay Buford. If you didn't, he would shut you down. Well, I don't know of any place he ever shut down, but just about everybody that you spoke with said, yeah, they paid him. But it was like Bill McPeters told me when I was down there, and I interviewed him one day. And he said, these places, they were competition to each other, and said you had to live on site or have someone staying there 24 hours a day, because if you didn't, your competition would come over and burn you out. So, yeah, I guess you could look at it and say, uh, well, it was all one big gang, one big syndicate. And I don't believe that for a minute. I tend to believe more along the line of what Bill McPeters had to say, in that you had to have somebody there to protect your property. You look at W.O. Hathcock. Now, he wasn't even in business when Buford was sheriff. I don't care what the movie had to show and had to say, but the point there being that Alcorn County refused to renew beer permits or alcohol permits of any kind. WO's was one of them. So he just closed up shop, shut the building down. He was using it to store antiques that he would buy, mostly from over in the east part of the country, and he'd store them in there. Well, you had somebody that was afraid that he might want to open up again someday. So they burnt the plantation club down. Evidence is so misunderstood by so many people. It's kind of like I was saying, it doesn't have to be direct evidence, but if you look at the information that you have, that you've gained, and you use some reasonable deductive processes, you get down to the facts, or what appear to be the facts. And that often plays a part. So Mark may be looking at that as well as all the hard evidence. Now, keep in mind that one reason that there's not more witnesses to all of this is because back then the TBI didn't do a good job of interviewing people. They missed a whole lot. Or there was a lot of political interference. And like in the next episode, we're going to talk about, pardon me, Ray Blanton, the governor of Tennessee. But you have all that. So I hope you think about it. I hope you know that whenever all these Pusser fans are saying, well, that's just circumstantial evidence, think about the snow I mentioned. If it's out there, it got there somehow, so you have to assume it snowed. It's just like with a lot of the things involved in the ambush. No one saw it, but you know what the end result was. And if there's enough of that information out there, you deduce what happened. It's kind of like Miss Connie and I going down that road at about 4:45 in the morning, and we could not see. Now, no one saw the ambush party go after Buford, but I could try to drive that in the dark. Wasn't able to do it, so I could deduce, for instance, that probably didn't happen with Buford, that there probably was no ambush party, at least chasing him down as he claimed. So think about things like that, and think about the power of circumstantial evidence. Hey, I would ask that you be sure and subscribe, ring that bell so you get notifications of all these new episodes when they come up. We want you to learn the real story. At any rate, I'm not going to keep everybody. This is a really nice Saturday, so I'm going to get off here, go out and enjoy it myself. But be sure and tune in next Thursday. We're going to have a really good episode where we talk about Ray Blanton, and going to share a lot of things that's going to surprise people. At any rate, we'll talk to you then. Thanks for being here, and just remember, as I always say, truth has no agenda.